We grew up and lived only about 20 miles from each other without even knowing it. So that's crazy about Eric Johnson. It turns out there was a that the outdoor super toxin was probably making us both sick. Hey, Catherine, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. So you know about ozone and PEMF and everything. So you obviously are not new to the Lyme mold world. And while you were getting ready, I checked out your channel. I saw you had pots, maybe too.
Yes, I do.
So how are you
Yep,
doing these days? And yeah, just so everybody knows, I'm a journalist. I'm not a doctor, so none of this is medical advice. I like, sharing and discussing this stuff with people. That's all.
awesome. Yeah, I'm actually a holistic health coach, and I got into that specifically because of I face these illnesses, and I know how hard it is to get good help, from doctors, and how hard it is to find good doctors. So I kind of want to be that gap between the person that has Lyme and mold and then their doctor.
Oh, that's cool. So can
Yeah.
you, I mean, just whatever you feel comfortable sharing, can you kind of tell us like your personal health history or background or, like what you've tried, what worked, what didn't, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm trying to think where to start. When I was in high school, I started getting just like really strange symptoms, like crazy muscle twitches. I started seeing floaters. Obviously, I had a lot of like tachycardia and things like that. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. A lot of onset anxiety from those things, pain, migraines every day, all day. Like that was probably one of the worst things. And then my blood pressure started to drop. I became incredibly bloated every time I ate food. Just like every single time I ate, I would look like I was pregnant, basically. It was awful. And I got misdiagnosed a lot. I went to a lot of doctors. Everyone said, "Oh, your lab work comes back normal. We don't know what to do with you. It's just anxiety," the typical story that you hear a lot of the
Yeah.
times. And it's just, I'm trying to think after that because it gets more complicated than that afterward. I found a doctor that he was decent. He knew more than a lot of the ones in my area did about Lyme. And my test came back inconclusive. I believe it was through Great Plains. So he treated me on Doxy for 2 years, which was a really long time to be on that medication.
That's
Really
so
long time.
typical. Yeah, like, within the first like couple months the bugs are already like hiding or gone, but they keep you on these drugs for like years. It's a disaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awful, and it messed my stomach up, and I began to have like these new onset allergies and sensitivities. I became allergic to like all artificial fragrance,
Mhm.
things like that, and it was awful. So it's definitely some like mast cell type things going on there. But yeah, I got diagnosed with POTS by a cardiologist finally after just like searching, years. And thank God my mom was a nurse, so she kind of diagnosed me before the doctor did, and then we found a doctor that was familiar with POTS. And the more research we got into it after I'd been diagnosed, we just learned that POTS usually has a cause, and we were getting to the bottom of it. And I actually have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome as well, which is a genetic connective tissue disorder. But I never had any genetic testing for it. It was just like what's called a Beighton scale that they measure.
Hmm.
Um, so we're suspicious now that maybe I don't have it. Maybe it's actually the Lyme that's attacked my connective tissue and things like that. So there's a little bit of a gray area there with me. But crazily enough, I found out I had mold illness through a health coach. I went to a health coach like really last resort. I was just getting sick again. I was fed up with, I thought I found the answers. I don't know what's going on. And she said, "Well, you sound like you have mold illness." And I was like, "Mold illness? Like, I know mold can make you sick, but I didn't know it was like a long-term thing." And I grew up in a house with black mold, like in a lot of places, like visible, especially like the bathrooms and the basement. So I was like, well, I've definitely had a mold exposure. I can tell you that. And I found a great doctor that started treating me for that. So she put me on, I'm trying to think of what the name it is, Well Call Binder.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, a few times a day. So I'm still on that. And then she's more of a functional medicine doctor. And then I found an absolutely amazing naturopath in my area just by chance. We were out running errands and doing some fun stuff. And she was like, a mutual friend was like, hey, like, this is my Lyme doctor. And I just went up to her and I was like, hey, do you need a health coach? And she was like, yeah, I do. And then we started talking, and she also suffered from mold illness and Lyme, and that's what
Hmm.
got her into it. So it was a very like meant to be type of thing, and
Hmm.
it was really cool. And so now she's treating me. So
It looks like we possibly lost our guest, you guys. Catherine, are you still there? Can you hear me? Or did my internet go out? I think it's hers that went out. Okay, well we'll wait and see if we can get her back. Um, okay, so she's gotten off, but we will. I think maybe she'll get back on in a minute, hopefully. So yeah, I was just interviewing. It's so crazy how many people have these health problems. Literally just basically they just flock onto my live stream. Let's see if she's back yet. Maybe her phone died or something. You never know. Okay, so any other questions, you guys? What would you guys like to chat about? How do we heal naturally with the environment? Well, the way that I did it was um, I discovered that there was a very specific type of mold that was causing all of my problems. It wasn't some of it. It wasn't one factor. It wasn't eat a good diet and do this. It was singular. I was chronically ill from a singular cause, nothing else. Obviously, eating a good diet and stuff is important too, right? But there's plenty of people, airline pilots, truck drivers, whatever, that eat gas station food and they feel fine. Now, again, I'm not saying you should do that. It's obviously going to give you cancer or make you sick in the long term. What I'm saying is that my symptoms, my problems were caused by a singular thing, and that was this specific type of mold that was the problem. Okay, we've got.
hey, so sorry, my phone just shut off.
Hey, it's technology. What can you do?
I know.
So yeah, that's interesting. And are you doing well now, or pretty good, or like, what's your status?
Yeah, so I'm definitely getting better, but going through treatment, I kind of get like after I do ozone and PEMF together, usually I end up being, a little bit sick for a few days, and I'm taking some like homeopathic like drops that she has made specifically for, Lyme and mold and stuff and certain things going on in my body. So she does this really cool cell testing, so they test at the cellular level. So if you can't if you're getting that inconclusive or you think you have Lyme and it's not coming up on your tests, I would highly recommend her because her testing gets to the bottom of it.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good that you might be able to sort of get on the path to recovery without more extreme mold measures. That's if you catch stuff
Yeah.
early enough, you can do that. And that's didn't work for me, but I'm also probably a lot older than you and didn't figure out the mold part for a really long time. It
Yeah, I know I lived in a moldy house for at least 21 years, so it
yeah.
it was a while, but yeah.
Have
So
you ever noticed when you travel places that you feel different? Like it's not always obvious, but you kind of drive in and out of neighborhoods or cities or go to the beach and your whole body, like your symptoms change and you're like you wonder to yourself, like, does anyone else feel this? Have you ever had that experience or not really?
um I haven't done much traveling since I got diagnosed with mold illness because of COVID and everything. So I haven't really been able to experience it with the knowledge I have now. But I have noticed like molds make me sicker than most people. Like if I'm in, like for example, last year, I got an air conditioner and I guess it wasn't draining properly. It's just one of the ones that go in the window, and it had mold in it. It was starting to grow, and I was getting like basically bronchitis, and
Hmm.
my husband totally fine. And I was like, what is happening? And then I finally was like, dusting one day and I looked in it and I was like, oh my gosh, that has mold in it. And I've been breathing that in. So I think it's made me a little bit more sensitive for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, gosh, I wish that I would have known more. I think that mold, I mean, you've heard the term biotoxin illness before. It's sort of where
Right.
the underlying cause of our issues isn't so much Lyme disease, it's biotoxin illness, where mold and Lyme both produce biotoxins, and our bodies can't get rid of those properly. And so that's a deeper layer of the onion, if you will, compared to like, oh, I just have Lyme disease, co-infections, Bartonella, Babesia. I just need to kill the heck out of it, take every herb under the sun. I mean, I had, it's crazy how long I was sick and how much stuff I tried. Like, it really is just insane to think about it. I mean, um, being a healthcare journalist and stuff, I had people sending me supplements and treatments, and I mean, I had like a whole pharmacy in my house, but it was like it did not matter how much I killed, how much I did anything, even the PEMF stuff stopped working until I got to a location that was mold free or a lot lower mold, because my body was just like, nope, not gonna help, not gonna help, nothing's gonna work. Ozone is the one thing that actually works pretty good for mold. So if somebody tells me, if they're like, nothing works for me except ozone, then that's a huge clue that mold is a bigger problem for them than anything else. If someone says that's not the case, then it's possibly less mold related.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wrote a book about 15 years ago called Lyme Disease and Rife Machines. It was about PEMF,
Oh,
all the different
awesome.
kinds of Rife machines. The book sold 100,000 copies. I quit my job. I became a healthcare journalist. Um, and that stuff got me back on my feet really well
Yeah,
until the mold finally destroyed me. It's
right.
yeah, we live in, houses things that we call houses are often like toxic boxes. We live, sleep,
Yeah,
breathe in these things 24 hours a day, especially in the wintertime. And it's like, what are these things actually made out of?
right. Yeah.
So
And it's that mold, like pretty much, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but pretty much everyone has some form of mold in their house these days. Like I'm very vigilant here now that I've gotten almost like mold about things, but like most people have something under their sink or like around their shower or like maybe their vent that in the bathroom, like something like that, their attic, their basement. And it's crazy that it's such a common issue and like we're never taught about how it affects us and how, toxic that it is to your body. And it's more than just breathing in mold. And when I was looking around on the internet to get some more information about it, like I was really taken aback by like how the CDC and everything, they just have like mold exposure and breathing in mold and like the allergy symptoms you get from mold, and like they don't go into anything else at all.
yeah, that's so true. I mean, the CDC and the mainstream medical approach to mold is very binary. It's like, these are the three molds that hurt you, and if this test doesn't
Yeah.
test positive, then you don't have it. It's totally ridiculous. But actually, to answer your question, ties into one of the questions that somebody's asking me here. How do you cope if you can't move? That's like really a
Mm,
primary question. Like, what do you do if you can't move? And here's the thing, guys. Um, First of all, it's a very individual thing. Like, how bad is your house, right? Like you said, there could
yeah.
be mold around your shower, mold around whatever. Well, some houses are riddled with mold to the point where you really should not live in them anymore, no matter what you do, because wood and drywall are porous. They absorb the mycotoxins, and you're never going to get rid of them no matter what you do. And so it depends, A, on how bad your house is, and B, on how sick your body is. Some people can get so
Yeah.
sick, like I was, that you really have to spend a period of time like totally away from mold. That's why like the viral videos on my channel that have had like 2 or 3 million views are me sleeping in the back of my truck, because I spent like a year sleeping in the back of my truck. I kept trying different environments, and I was like, the only place I feel good is sleeping in the back of my truck. Now, not everybody has to do that, thankfully, and that's fine. It's everybody's different. But the question of how bad is your house and how clear do you need to get is kind of a moving target. It's not the same for everybody. It also depends on what kind of mold it is. Like one of the best healing campgrounds that I spent a lot of time at was on the coast, and there was rotting wood and logs and decomposing leaves everywhere, and it was moldy as heck. And guess what? It was totally fine because it was not a dangerous kind of mold. So what I would
Yeah.
say to winter 1692, what if you can't leave your house? Um, just be careful, because I didn't want to leave my house, but like I had to eventually because I just kept getting sicker and sicker, and the remediation stuff we weren't trying. So the real message about mold is that you don't really get to choose. Like it's not a personal preference. It's not like how much, what if I don't want to leave my house? Well, it's kind of like going to the doctor if you have like a broken leg and you tell the doctor like, what if I don't want to cast? Well, your leg's not going to heal. So there's not always like a choice in it. Now it sounds like you, Catherine, you are still at a phase where you caught things early enough and you're able to start making forward progress. The important thing for
Yeah.
you would be to never again spend too much time in a moldy environment. Like if
Yes.
you buy a moldy vacation home or something and you start to feel sick there, just don't do it. Like because you don't want to go down that road where you get so sensitive to mold that you can't even be in normal houses anymore. That's what happened to me.
I know a lot of people that get that way, and that's one of the things that scares me a little bit because I'm like, oh, how, like, what causes you to get to that point? Basically, is it just your body's toxic load has had enough? If I'm treating this, will it get better? Because like, I still go to my parents' house for things like birthday parties and like get-togethers that they have, and I try to do it. They do it mostly in the summer, so like we'll be outside having a campfire or something, so that's better. But like just yesterday, like I was over for my dad's birthday and I was in the house for probably an hour, and like it's I always worry when I go home, like I take a shower and everything, like that does anything because I'm just like, I don't
No,
want to.
that's really smart. I mean, Eric Johnson, who discovered the whole concept of mold avoidance, he was actually a biowarfare officer in the army. So he was like trained to decontaminate from like field exposures of nerve gas and stuff like that. So that's actually really smart. Like you go, if you're in a moldy building or a moldy place, take a shower. The
Yeah.
other important thing is your sleeping environment, because your body does almost all of its detox when you're sleeping. So like a lot of
Yeah.
people like me, they get to the point like I can be in almost any building all day, wherever, but I have to sleep in a good location. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
the back of my truck was such a godsend. Like, even though it sounds silly, people are like, you sleep in the back of your truck, you're some like homeless bum. I'm like, no, I own 3 houses. I'm not a homeless bum, but I own 3 houses that I can't
Mm-hmm.
live in. But I slept in the back of my truck with a space heater for almost 2 years, and it saved my life. It was like my body was just like, you're sleeping in a metal box right now. Like that's the only place you can go. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think Eric Johnson calls it the power curve. The power curve is where you, like what you're saying, like you regulate how much mold exposure you get, and you just watch out for that. Now like, hey, I can't be around too much mold or bad things will happen. I didn't know that. I wish I would have known that. It became way too late for me.
Yeah, I can
So,
absolutely see that. And I think if you're a person that's living in mold and you can't get out, I think spending as much time away from your house as possible. Like if you have a good friend or relative, you can maybe go relax at their house for a little bit, get outside when it's nice, like, read or be on your phone, like outside. Getting an air purifier is better than nothing if you are really stuck. Making sure that you keep your house dusted and clean, washing your bed sheets and everything regularly. And a thing I'm a big fan of is like a neti pot, just to get it out of your sinuses. Even just washing it out. Like I know water is not going to kill it, but you can wash a little bit of it out of your nose.
oh, totally. Yeah, all that stuff is helpful. Um, and then the classic mold sabbatical that I always tell people about, where if you're really suspicious about your house or your situation, just go get a hotel room or go camping for a week. And
Mm-hmm.
some people literally, I talked to hundreds of people that do that, and they have like a miraculous recovery, while they're gone. And then
Yep.
they come back to their house and they get really sick again. And that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to be forced to move their house if that happens, but at least you have the information. You're like, okay, my house is the problem. And then you can choose to approach that problem, like you said, with try air purifiers, or, there's a lot of like things you can try, but at least you have the knowledge and the information that many people don't have.
Yeah, and I actually had that experience a little bit when I didn't realize that I had mold illness because I went on vacation with my friends to the beach for a week and I felt like $1,000,000. Like I was exercising on the beach even though like I didn't have any tachycardia, like I was eating everything. I wasn't getting enough sleep and before it was like, man, when I didn't get 12 hours of sleep, like I couldn't function. And it was incredible. And then I came home and I was like getting mood swings, like I felt bad and I was just thinking like, oh, I guess just like back to normal life, like this is what it is. I'm just sad that my vacation's over, but looking back on it now, I'm like, that was probably because I was breathing in all this fresh salty air that was, decongesting me and I was away from the environment that was harming me.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I was asking you earlier. Like, have you gone somewhere or left your house? Like, those are such important clues that the environment is an
Yeah.
issue, like that you need to look in the environment. Um, it's funny, I have a finance TikTok channel with almost 100,000 followers, and everybody's coming into my chat right now saying, like, should I get a 15 or 25-year mortgage? It's hilarious.
Is there
TikTok,
a way I can
what?
chat or do I not see it?
It's I think we have separate chats. Like you have
Oh god.
your own separate viewers, your own chat. I have 27 people. It says in my chat right now. I don't know if there's a way. I sometimes like have my other phone, and I'll like
Mm-hmm.
go to your chat or whoever I'm partnering with, and see see if I can answer any questions in the other
Oh,
person's place. But
good idea.
it it's funny. The TikTok algorithm is like, hey, we do facial recognition. This guy's the same guy. Like, let's send him all these like finance people that don't care about mold and Lyme. It's really funny. Um, yeah, that's the ticket, is to do all the stuff we were talking about, ozone, PEMF, all the health coaching stuff you talk about, and then just make sure you don't let the mold get too bad, because if it does, there's sort of a point of no return. And unfortunately, that's a lot of the people that like I talk to or deal with, or the people that are like totally bedridden, like they couldn't even sit up like you are and have a conversation. There was one guy who literally let it go so far. And this is a warning to the people in the audience. Like, you might be thinking, that's not me, I'm not that sick. Well, yeah, not yet. Like, if you live in a really moldy environment, it can get that bad. He had to be
Yeah.
transported out to the desert to go camping flat on his back in a van, and with
Wow.
caretakers. And it's like, just don't let that happen. And that's why, people who are, who say like, I could never leave my house, or what, the most common question I get is, what if you can't leave your house, right? And I get it. Nobody wants to leave their house. I didn't want to leave their house. And you might not have to leave your house. There's a 99% chance that you don't have to leave your house. But if you did have to leave your house to save your life, like, isn't that worth it? It's a house. Who cares? You can sell it and buy a different one. Like, it's just such a small, thing in life. Family, health, those are the things that matter. Houses don't really matter, but
Yeah.
no, not everybody's going to listen to me on that.
And it is such a scary cycle too because when you get really ill because of things like mold, then you start spending more time at home. Like when I first got really sick, and I'm not sure what really kickstarted me getting like super duper ill to where I could no longer work anymore.
Hmm.
I did go through a period of time like that. Like I don't know, the Lyme. Like I think I've had Lyme for over 10 years, so maybe my body's toxic load just got to its threshold. Like who knows? But whenever I could no longer work and I was always at home, oh my gosh, I got so bad. And it's awful because, like I said, it's a cycle where you feel bad, you don't want to leave your house, you become like bedridden basically, and then you're just stuck in the environment that's literally making you sick. But it's a chore for you to even go to the grocery store. So what are you supposed to do? Like it is awful when you're in it for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, if your house is making you sick and then you get sicker, so you're stuck at home even more, like, how messed up is that? Like, what a bummer. You're exactly right. Like, that's totally what happens. That's what happened to me. I used to notice that if I went hiking and mountain biking, it would like alleviate my symptoms. I didn't know at the time that it was because I was being out of my house, but then when you get so sick, you're like, oh, I'm not going to go out today. I'm not going to do anything. And your house becomes this like nemesis of suffering, and you don't even recognize it, because mold does this thing called masking to you, at masking, MASK, where your body no longer recognizes that there's an exposure happening. And so you don't know that your
Yeah.
house is bad until you go away, take a break from it. Don't bring your moldy stuff. I tell people, buy some new clothes at Walmart, go to a hotel, sit in the hot tub, swim in the pool, like, get all of the garbage that is on your body from your house off of you. And then
Yeah.
a lot of people, they'll go back to their house and they'll walk in the front door and they'll be like, oh my gosh, my house is the thing that's making me sick. Um,
Yeah.
so it's not a popular topic. I'm definitely not going to reach 1 million followers telling people that their house might be making them sick, because 99% of people are going to say, I just want a supplement. I just want a device. I just want like
Mhm.
something I can spend $100 on and plug in the wall and like, like whatever. But, and many times that will work, but it might not too. And that's a message that people
Yeah.
need to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a hard thing to hear. I'm still to this day trying to convince my parents to move. So it's hard for people.
Yeah. Are your parents, do they have health problems or does it not affect them?
They say it doesn't, but they do. Well, my dad has liver cancer right now,
Oh,
so
wow.
we don't know. I'm looking into the whole like mold and cancer, thing. I haven't got any conclusive evidence yet because it's very new to me. Um, but seeing how that affects him, like obviously him being on chemo is very worrisome because that brings your immune system down even more. So then he won't be able to fight the mold as well. And my mom has a lot of breathing issues and AFib, and my little brother has a lot of the same problems that I do. He pretty much always tremors. He has like this tremor, and his blood work comes back fine. So, um, yeah, they don't really know what's wrong with him, but
Wow. It
obviously, I'm
just,
like I.
yeah, those are a
So
lot of interesting clues. Yeah, you find out that because usually inability to detox mold can be genetic. So like chances are that like everybody in the family is going to have it manifest one way or another, and some are going to be worse. Um so someone's asking, this is a really important question, why would an air filter not work? The reason that an air filter would not work is the same reason that an air filter won't work for nuclear radiation, right? Like if a nuclear bomb goes off in your neighborhood, no one's going to be like, oh, I'll be fine with an air filter. Why? Well, because the stuff is too toxic, right? It's way too toxic.
mhm.
You need to get rid of all of it. And if somebody has been exposed to mold for their whole life and their body is literally just beat down for decades and decades and decades, and you can be at death's door, and an air filter isn't going to be enough for some people. For other people it will. There's no one size fits all, you guys. It's just important to understand all the dynamics here, and then you can see what works for you. Christopher says, am I going to answer your question? Please ask it again. I didn't see it. And then, someone's saying that you should tell your parents to get a mold test so that you can prove to them, like, hey, your house has mold, which is a good
we
idea.
Yes, we have. We've had a lot of the remediation companies in our area. They do like a free inspection, and we had one guy come and tell us how bad it was. And unfortunately, their basement repeatedly floods, so they'd have to do
Oh.
a really good bit of work to the foundation of the house to keep that from happening if they're going to remediate. So it's going to be incredibly expensive, and that's all my dad hears. And then it's he's got a lot going on, so you can't blame him too much, but it's hard because it costs a lot of money. And
Yeah. It's funny.
yeah.
That's a big paradigm because I have a wife and 3 kids, so it's not like I can just like move around and live in a camper or whatever. But I did undergo like a huge paradigm shift. And yeah, mold in timber houses, someone's asking, but the paradigm shift that I went through was like, I don't want to have a lot of money tied up in real estate anymore. Like I own rental properties now, and I don't
Hmm.
I but the house that I own myself is like a much cheaper house than I would normally own, because I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be so, like you said, it's expensive. I don't want to be so tied to real estate because I just don't agree with the way that real estate is built now for health people with health problems and detox issues. Like it's not,
Yeah.
real estate is designed, homes are designed for energy efficiency. They're designed for, structural integrity, which are great things. There's nothing wrong with that. We need that. We need our roof to not collapse on our head, but they are not at all designed for mold resistance. In fact, they're designed to be moldy. I mean, drywall is the dumbest thing in the world. Drywall absorbs water. It doesn't dry out. It has
Yeah.
like a 6 week half life for how long the water stays in the wall. And to make it even worse, they put all the plumbing inside the walls where you can't see it. So you could have one of your pipes dripping a slow drip of water in your wall for 30 years and never even
Yeah.
know it. Like, what kind of idiots put the plumbing inside the walls? A lot of my friends who remodel houses for mold illness, they do visible plumbing. You put the plumbing either on the outside walls, not if you're in a cold location, or the inside wall. It looks a little funny to have interior plumbing, right? But who cares what it looks like? So there's all this
Right.
stuff that's bad with houses that people don't talk about. And so I just don't like houses. I'm not a big fan of like houses, and it's not very convenient when you have kids, because we have a house that isn't moldy now, and we do live in the house. But I'm scared of my house. I'm like ready to sell my house any minute. So
Yeah.
the Stokes theorem, there's a guy in here who, I think a guy or a girl, who follows both of my channels. He says he has a slow drip in his ceiling for years. Yeah, how are you ever going to know? And that's just one of many bad, dumb things they do with houses. They also build houses out of particle board, and the particle board is preserved with heavy metals and chemicals, preservatives. So here we are, me and Katherine are talking about like eat organic, detox, all this stuff, but your houses are made out of heavy metals and chemicals. Like what? And we're
Yeah.
sleeping in them all the time. Then when they get wet, the mold uh, processes and eats those chemicals and heavy metals and excretes mycotoxins that now are not just regular mycotoxins, which are already bad for you, but they're like chemical mycotoxin, like bombshells that are like going to totally screw you up. So it's like, it doesn't matter what we do if we're not having the conversation about our house, right? And if you catch your problems early enough, you may not have to move. You can keep up, like what you were saying, you can keep up with your detox and without needing to move in many cases. But a lot of people just it doesn't work for them. It's you got to do what works. You have to look in the mirror and say, like, am I actually getting healthier? This time last year, my health compared to now, like, can I work now? Can I run a mile now? And
Yeah.
that's why I did mold avoidance, because it was miraculous for me. I mean, it was literally fully miraculous. And I wish people are like, oh, you make money, you're selling it. I'm like, no, I'm telling people to go camping in a tent. Like, how can I make money off of that? It's not. If I wanted to make money, I would tell you guys to buy my proprietary supplement, right? But telling someone that their house might be making them sick and that they need to go camping isn't exactly the best moneymaker out there.
No.
Where did you say you lived, or like what region?
Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
it's super humid here in like spring, summer, fall, and then the winters are very, very cold and wet.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be a big factor. I there's a lot of people up there that and it's not even just so people know, it's not even just about moisture. Tucson, Arizona is one of the worst moldy places. Now, why would that make sense? Well, because the particular bad kind of mold that makes you the sickest happens to grow there in the houses there. So it's not just about humidity. That's like one of the common misconceptions about um, mold illness.
Yeah.
This
And
is
dust is a super food for mold. So keeping your house like dust free and things like that. Now, obviously, that's not really going to help anything going on inside your walls, but other places, it's just good.
Yeah, yeah, it's stuff that and cleaning, basic cleaning and air purifying and stuff like that. The hydroxyl generators is kind of like a gentler version of ozone that can really be helpful. Again, yeah, there's tons of stuff you can do if you don't live in a horrible house. My house, the last house that I lived in where I got really sick, was a really bad house.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot of decorative angles on the outside of the house, like a lot of dormers and like cool. It was a very cool, expensive looking house, but when the siding started to get like weaker and peel off, there were lots of places where water could get in, and it
Yeah.
just was riddled with mold. So now I like boxy, boring houses. Like, give me a house with four walls and a regular pitched roof. First of all, it's easier for me to repair the roof and fix it if it's just a easy roof and not some fancy,
Yeah.
mansion. Um. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We have a mold remediation company in here, and I love
Oh,
what you're doing.
cool.
Remediating mold is a great service to society. It's just some people will not be able to stay in their house no matter what kind of magic you work with remediation, because it's all an individual thing. If somebody is this sick and their house is super crappy, like, they're just gonna have to take a break from their house. There's just no other way to do it.
Yeah. And some things too that are really helpful is if your toxic load is up here because of the mold, think about what you're putting into your body, what you're putting on your body, those chemicals. You can start with cutting out chemicals that you clean with, and then cut out slowly, like, am I going to use a natural shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, toothpaste, lotion, all of that kind of stuff, because all of that's going to bring your toxic load down a little bit. I mean, when we're dealing with mold, we're talking about some serious, you know, toxins here, with the mycotoxins and everything. They're on a whole nother level, but things like that can help you, if you're not eating food that's full of chemicals and, artificial things and manufactured things and things that are going to make you sick. And another thing that people don't think about too is like your furniture. Like if you buy brand new furniture, a lot of it has formaldehyde all over it, and you are just increasing your toxic load even more. And the danger with that is, once you hit your threshold, like you get severely ill. And if you are sick now, not to scare anyone, but if you're sick and you continue, with these certain things, like you can get sicker, because it happened to me.
Exactly. Yeah. People think like that's the biggest mistake people make is they think like, oh, I don't need to pay attention to this stuff because I'm not that sick. Yeah, but you live in
Mm-hmm.
a society that's getting more and more and more toxic. So do the math. Like, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? It's not hard to look at the out of control train going down the hill where it's going to end up. It's bad, and it's definitely a paradigm change because we're used to thinking about, like you said, our furniture, our house, everything being a separate thing from our health. Like we go to the doctor for our health, we eat organic food for our health, but nobody thinks about their couches being loaded
Right.
with like fire retardants and formaldehyde and garbage that's clogging up their liver. So it's a very like it's a paradigm change. Environmental illness. It's in a lot of illness is environmental illness, and it's where it starts, but people never look there. They never think to look in that realm.
Yeah, and a lot of people think like, well, everyone buys furniture from the furniture store, and we all live here in houses and things, so it must be fine. We all eat this food; it must be fine. But like I said, with the mold, like the thing is, your body's already attacking the mycotoxins in your system and things like that. So your body's already on high alert, and then you just add more things that are tearing down the integrity of your body's systems that need to work properly in order for you just to live normally, let alone be able to cope with, mold or Lyme or something like that. And it's really something that's only been happening since the early 90s with all these chemicals that we've been manufacturing recently. And if you just Google it and you look into it a little bit, like chemicals in America, like we are so far behind Europe with all of this stuff. Like they ban thousands of chemicals that we still use and ingest, like in food.
It's very true. And you know what the secret is? It's mold illness is actually caused by chemicals. Mold illness is actually caused by chemicals because if you didn't bother the mold with those chemicals, you just let the mold sit alone. Like if you went to a jungle in South America that had fungus growing everywhere, 100% humidity, decaying logs, none of that stuff makes you sick. Now, of course, you're going to get some, exotic bacteria or mushroom that's going to kill you or something, but the chronic poisoning isn't going to happen. It's the chemicals are what weaponize the mold into a very dangerous form. So, one way or another, it is chemicals that is the problem. It's either direct chemicals that you are exposing yourself to, like what you were saying, and America's still way behind, or it's the mold eating the chemicals and making chemical mycotoxins, which are the ultimate weapon of destruction. All right,
Okay,
I
I
think we're
think you're
back.
yeah, so if you're living in mold and then you get out of mold, you still need to go see your doctor and get on the proper medication, supplements, the proper therapies like that, because the mold is still in your system. And what happened with me, and I'll learn here, in a few years, probably once I'm done with treatment, whether it's the mold attacking me right now that's left in my system, the mold and the Lyme, or if it's some more long term damage that it's done. Because, I mean, I'm telling you, once those mycotoxins get into your nervous system, your life will never be the same. It just wreaks havoc on your entire body. So
Yeah.
it is so important for you, even if you moved away from mold, to really see a doctor that knows what they're talking about so you can get it out of your system.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely in support of people using doctors, medical treatments, whatever they need to do. Every modality can work together. Although I will say, if you watch the latest video on my channel, I show some other people who did extreme mold avoidance, and these are people who thought for years and years and years that they had permanent damage, and then
Mm-hmm.
within days, like all of their problems, their symptoms were gone. Now the problem is you can't live out in the middle of nowhere. You do have to return to civilization, but it just
Yeah.
shows you how much stuff can actually be reversed if you do extreme mold avoidance. One of the things that people don't realize, they think that if a little bit of mold avoidance is good, that a lot of mold avoidance is not needed. You know what I mean? Like, we have this society now. This is probably the most important point I'm going to say to you guys about mold. We have this society where it's kind of like when we do health treatments, we pick and choose a little bit. We're like, I'm going to do a little bit of sauna. I'm going to do a little bit of ozone. I think I'll take a little bit of that herb. And it's kind of like based on our cultural, like, live and let live. Everybody do your own thing. Like, nobody tell each other what to do. I'm not going to go there with like whatever, because like, okay, fine, that's where our society is, that's fine. But sometimes health doesn't work that way. We don't get to manufacture our own, like, um a picture of things. Like, it might be the case that extreme mold avoidance actually could be beneficial to a lot more people than they realize, even if they don't like it, even if they don't want to do it. Like, some people might be like, I only want to do a little bit of mold avoidance, and then I want to go do the sauna, or I want to go do that. And the message is, you don't really get to personally pick what the answer is. So I mean, you should check out, like, there's a lot of people with who had miraculous things happen with, and I don't want to
Yeah.
use miraculous because that's such a silly word when it comes to health, but they had, to be more specific, they had things that they thought were um like damage, quote unquote, long term. That long term damage word is an easy way for doctors to get out of something that they can't fix. Right? You go in
Yeah.
their office, you take all their tests, you do all their treatments, and you get like 80% better, which is awesome, right? Like, you're happy. But then they're like, the remaining 20% is long term damage. Like, really? Prove it. And even if it is
Yeah.
long term damage, prove to me that if I remove the offending substance, 100% remove it, prove to me that that long term damage can't heal. They can't prove it, and they'll never suggest it, and they don't even talk about it,
Right.
because, and like I say, I'm not a doctor. Catherine's not an MD. And so we're not saying, like, don't listen to your doctor, listen to us. What I'm saying is that, go to your doctor, get your medical treatment from your doctor, but also use your own brain.
And if a doctor worked for you for a little bit, I had that experience. Like, if you got better with them, like you said, like 80% better, but you're still not quite there, and they're telling you that there's nothing you can do. Maybe you guys aren't starting to jive there with certain things. Find a new doctor. You don't have to give in to that. Like, even if you think they're right, I would recommend finding another one for a second opinion, just so you know, because, like, why would you want to play around with your health like that? Like, if you really could get completely better, wouldn't you want to try?
I heard your video on that, about firing your doctor and not being afraid. That is such good advice, because so
Yeah.
many of us will just go in and we'll submit to our doctor. We, like, don't want to hurt their feelings, or it's embarrassing to quit them, or I had a really bad chiropractor really screw up my neck, and it was
Mm-hmm.
the funniest story. It's only a 30-second story, but I usually saw his wife, and she was a really good chiropractor, but she was gone, and this guy was like part-time chiropractor, part-time contractor. And I was like, I know, right? Like, this guy's a total idiot. And I was like, I should not sit in this guy's chair. I should not. But I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, because I was, like, embarrassed and, like, insecure to, like, just be like, screw it, I'm leaving. And I should have just gotten out of that place, and it messed up my neck for years. So yeah, that's great advice that you have, that do not just submit to any old doctor. These doctors, they might not know what they're talking about. They might be tired. They might not be the right specialist for you. You might have
Right.
reached the end of their expertise. Who knows?
Yeah, and this isn't to say that, like, doctors are bad. Like, no one doctor can know everything. And a lot of the unfortunate thing is, like, a lot of the stuff we're dealing with here with mold and Lyme, there's just not a lot of really clinical, like, literature on it. There's more these days than there used to be, but they're not trained in this. it's a new thing what we're talking about for the most part. It's not new in that it's been affecting people for years, but it's new to recognize it and to give it the platform here on the internet and things like that. So it doesn't have any studies, and that's how doctors learn. You know, all through med school, they look at clinical studies and research and what the data shows and all those type of things. So I recently went to my cardiologist and just for a POTS checkup, what you have to do every couple of years. And he was telling me, oh, there's no way POTS is caused by Lyme. Like, it's just its own thing. You'll probably grow out of it. And it's just really interesting, because you kind of have to take things with a grain of salt, because I'm here and I'm educated enough to know that is not true.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. They can't know everything, and POTS is very common in the mold Lyme complex, and that's one of the harder symptoms. That if you have that one, it's really hard to get rid of that one. I mean, that's like one of
Yeah.
the harder ones to deal with. Um, yeah, it's great conversation. I like talking to other people about this because it's you kind of get stuck in your own ways of thinking. It's nice to have someone like challenge you and remind you of stuff. And like, by the way, I was going to ask you, do you mind if I upload this to my YouTube channel and you can give me like your coaching information? I'll put it in the description or
Oh, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, I always ask people because if you didn't want to, that's totally fine. But I want to share this with as many people as I can. And I actually have a lot of kind of like old school Lyme disease followers that are like Lyme diehard. Like they're still, you've heard of this, right? Tell me you have not heard of this. Being from Pennsylvania, like that's like the Lyme center of the world. How many
I
friends or
know.
acquaintances do you know that are like on IV antibiotic cocktails of like 7 different
Oh,
antibiotics for like 20 years? And they're like, I'm trying, Rocephin and tinidazole and they're like literally walking around in their wheelchair with their like IV hooked up for years and years and years, and they don't get better.
yeah. Yeah. It's awful here where I live. It's been at pandemic level for like at least 10 years, and it's rarely talked about. So it's bad. And I know people, they've had PIC lines in and they think they've been treated, but they still feel like absolute crap. And their doctor's like, well, that like you said, that's just long-term damage, and it's like,
It's like if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If all you have is IV antibiotics, everything that you treat needs IV antibiotics. And if they don't work, then you have long-term damage. It's
yeah. And I'm a big believer in natural medicine, but I love conventional medicine too. And I think if you're dealing with something like Lyme and mold, you have to have both to really get better. And that's just what I believe. You
yeah,
absolutely have to have both.
yeah. I totally agree with you. I mean, I don't think there ever should be a competition between conventional and alternative medicine. That's like saying there
Yeah.
should be a competition between like plumbers and electricians. Like what?
I
They
know
do
it's
different jobs. Like you need both. And yeah, I never. I mean, definitely there's a need for both. And it's the same in politics. Like some conservative ideologies make sense, some liberal ideologies make sense. Like why would you just stick to one? Like it doesn't make any sense to be polarized on one side of any debate.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do have one maybe somewhat controversial topic. Um, like, how do you feel about people getting the COVID vaccine when they have mold illness? I've heard a lot of different opinions on this, and just like looking for ways I can like direct my clients and things like that.
I don't like to talk about it because it's so like canceled right now. Anybody who has like an
Right.
opinion on that topic like basically gets canceled immediately on any platform. So I choose not really to talk about it, but I will say that um it's a mixed bag. Like there are some people I've heard who have had that and they are okay and they don't have any adverse effects, but the people with chronic illness can have more severe adverse effects from it, from what I've heard, colleagues, people in the field. But I mean, it's also, that bug, I'll use the word bug to avoid the, bad words that everybody cancels, but um, it's a bad bug that really does a lot of damage to people. So it's like, it's kind of a personal, choice about, but you know what I would suggest to people? There are some groups now that are full of, hundreds of thousands of mold patients, like on Facebook, whatever. And there's a lot of data being gathered now about like people who got the thing and
Yeah, I would
how did
definitely
it affect them, you know?
considering it. Yeah.
So it's a matter of, I do think we're still in early days in not knowing what all like the side effects and the outcome is of that. I mean, it's early days. So it's like
Right.
personally I've chosen to wait on it because um it's early days. It's kind of like, you know what, when Apple comes out with new software for their iPhone, like, I never download the software the same day. They're like, you have an iOS 14 update. I'm like, no, I'm going to let like 20 million other people download that, and then it's going to break their phone, and Apple's going to release updates, and then in like 3 months when they like fix everything, I'll download the update. That's how I feel
Yeah.
about new experimental things. Like we're not going to use the words, but um because it's like I don't want to be the guinea pig and go out and do that first. Now, I'm not saying I'm right and that everybody should listen to me or that I'm an expert on the topic. That's just where I'm at.
Right. Yeah, I would just advise anyone with chronic illness to look into it and know that, I mean, COVID vaccine aside, you are at risk more to have adverse effects, like you said, really from anything.
Yeah.
Even just walking down the street, you're more at risk to have an adverse effect to that. So just look into it. Facebook groups are great. You can always go on there and find like a mold or a Lyme group and ask people that have had it, how they've experienced it and how they felt.
Yeah, the
So,
reason, I mean, I know that like a Facebook group is not a very scientific study on
right.
side effects. However, because the government and the universities are not studying the effects of it in chronically ill people, we have no choice. Like, I would much rather have a university do a study, say, okay, so how does the, bug shot, I'm using silly words, how does it affect people with chronic illness? Like, great, study that, please. Scientists need to study that. But if they're not studying that, then I have no choice but to do my own research and ask people who have had it, who have chronic illness problems, if it messed them up. What other choice do we have? So
Right.
anyway, all right, I do actually have to get going here. I got to go deal with some kid stuff, but it was awesome talking to you. We should chat again, and
Yeah,
it's more fun to do these lives with someone else. After like 20 minutes, I just get so sick of my own voice.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, thanks for talking to me. It was fun.
Yeah, yeah, you too, Catherine. It was a great conversation. Have an awesome night, and we'll talk again.
Sounds good. You too.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.